All right, so my friend calls me up and he says that his friend is all upset because he knows me to be different, right? That I would never do this kind of thing. But my friend tells me that a couple of weeks ago, Hyungjin Sean Moon, on his Sunday sermon, says that I offered my wife as a concubine to him. All right, I cannot respect my wife and not make this video. So, unfortunately, I have to make this video. Okay? So, here's the story. I'm not going to give a lot of backstory, although I want to. It was 2015, and Hyungjin is talking about being the best man. Okay, which means that you let your wife make love to God. You get out of the way. That this is the spirit associated with 6 Marys and this kind of thing. So the church was abuzz back then with this topic. I knew many men who struggled with this issue, that they were going to get themselves out of the way, even spiritually, to let another entity, another being, even God. And some people struggled with even that. Okay, so I even put up a video about this experience that I had, and it went like this. And you can check this video from May, hold on, let me see. It is, the video is called The Destruction of Ego Sex, and it's May 12th, 2015, on my channel. I don't go into as much detail as I'm going to go into right now, but basically we were at the, back then it wasn't even a round table. It was all the long square, rectangular tables set end to end in the foyer of the church. Okay, Sanctuary Church. And, you know, all the usual sycophants who don't want to look like sycophants are there. And, you know, me, I'm just trying to share. That's that's always what I was trying to do. Okay, so basically, Hyungjin and Cookjin were asking the people at the table the question, what if Father asked you to send your wife to his room? All right. Now, since I don't play games with appreciating what's been done for me and indemnity, and especially the 3-day ceremony, I had a very deep experience with the 3-day ceremony, and I had a very deep experience saying thank you to Father directly, okay, over the 3-day ceremony, and this was in 2002. So I don't take it lightly. There was an air of accusation and testing in the brother's speech in that, you know, in that potluck conversation. And so I had, out of respect for them, I had to take the question seriously, and I go into all the things that I was led to ponder as a result of being asked that question. Okay? I think that the question itself got started by Cookjin, I'm pretty sure. And then Hyungjin took over talking about, you know, that the people who were involved with 6 Marys had to do this kind of thing. And some of the brothers around the table, you know, swore up and down that they're pretty certain that there were other couples that had to go through a 6 Marys type of situation, even men having to give up their wife. Okay. But I couldn't escape the question being put to me. Okay? I actually had to face the question. So I tell you in the video that I couldn't touch my wife because I hadn't been responsible enough to answer the question. I told one of my friends, and he suggested that I tell Hyungjin about the fact that I'm going through this. So I did tell Hyungjin. I told Hyungjin that I'm being asked, because you asked this question a week or so ago, I'm actually wondering if I have the ability to, on the one hand, keep my wife for myself and say no to Father, or worst case scenario, if this was real and God had to recreate a foundation because of a tragic, catastrophic failure of Hak Jahan, everything had to be rebuilt, which means the 6 Marys foundation had to be rebuilt. Would I participate in the 6 Marys foundation by offering my wife? That I had to answer the question. Okay? He said, well, what do you think? I said, well, I'm still chewing on it. He didn't offer me an answer, okay? So some weeks later, he offered the idea that Joseph Smith and the successor of Joseph Smith carried on this concubines activity, but the greatness of Father is that his next generation doesn't have to, okay? So Hyungjanim in his way put that to bed. In my way, it was put to bed. The turmoil in me was put to bed in another way. Okay? Anybody who's my friend knows that I take the principle seriously, okay? And I take what's going on in my mind, what I'll actually do in the situation. I want to own it, okay? I don't want to be spooked into something. I don't want to, okay? So when I examine both of these paths, if the providence actually needed that, Satan would say that I'm stingy if I withhold my wife, right? And if I got tricked into thinking that the providence needed it, and I sent my wife there, okay, then Satan would say, you fool, Father said everything is finished. Now you just stuck this scar in between you and your wife, because now your wife has this experience with this other man because you're faithless, okay? So Satan had me, and I was damned either way I answer the question. There was a way that Satan was going to accuse me. And I think I shared this with Hyungjanim. So he just had pretty much a blank look, and you know, he kind of said, no, we're not planning to do that providence. And I kind of said to him, yeah, I get that, but still as a man in front of God, me answering the question for myself, what I would do is really important for me, okay? And you know, so I noticed that in his Sunday sermon of 2 weeks ago, he said that, okay, that I loved him enough that I would offer my wife. No, I never offered my wife to him. I offered to him the facts of what I was going through in answering to the spirit world, to the entire cosmos, what I would do under that pressure. I offered to him a story, a telling of what I was going through. So, how did this end? I'll tell you how it ended. It ended when, hang on a second. It ended when, you guys get the door. All right, so it ended when I faced God after coming in the door, agonizing over this whole thing over and over and over again. And I said, a moment of clarity came over me. And I said to God, there's some background to this comment that I made to God. But I said to God, you would never ask me such a question. And God said, you're right. And this heavy cloud that had been on me ever since those brothers were at that potluck talk, asking everybody around, would you go if Father asked you to send your wife? Would you send your wife if Father asked? I had a clear conclusion and a meeting of minds and hearts with God right then and there, okay? So what did I do? I went, and for the sake of closure for Hyungjanim, I went to him, I believe it was a Wednesday. It was right after one of his Wednesday sermons at the church. It was in the middle of the week, and I caught up to him. We were in the foyer again, and I said to him, I got an answer, and I told him how I got a moment of clarity, and I said to God, you would never do that. And here's what Hyungjanim did. I told him that God, I said to God, you would never do that, and then God replied to me instantly, you're right. And then I told him that that heavy cloud that I had told him about before had lifted off, and that was the end of it. And this is what he did. He went, he said, can you tell the queen, can you tell my wife that story? And I said, sure. He said, wait right here. And he went and got his wife and made me recap the whole concluding experience that I had with God in the front hallway of my house, okay? So my feeling was that ever since the day I told them I was in turmoil, they had been talking about it, and they were invested enough in how I would resolve it to, to keep it in their memory. Okay, why else do you go, wait right here, tell my wife? Okay, unless, you know, that doesn't look like people who have been ignoring it ever since I had the original conversation with him about it. And again, that original conversation was not me resolved. The whole thing was me being in a situation where I couldn't answer one way or the other. So if I told him, yo, here's my wife. Okay, everybody who knows me knows that my wife is the most valuable thing I have. That's not a game, okay? And I feel all kinds of feelings about the fact that out of all the people you know, you're going to pick somebody who is that clear about the blessing. You pick anybody you want. Pick your champion. You could even pick yourself. and I'll face them in a debate about the meaning and the value of the blessing, because I always talk about the blessing. And everybody who knows me knows that, and you do too. So I don't know why you're trying to grandstand in front of the whole world as if I stupidly would offer. I was in turmoil, and the reason I was in turmoil was because somebody in your position asked me the question. And the only reason why such a stupid question was taken seriously is because you're the son, you're the direct son of the Messiah. Something that I wish, when you look at the behavior of your siblings and now your own behavior, you wish, people like me, we stand here wishing that you had a deeper understanding of what it means to be the son of the Messiah. Because you can't tell me that you think that I don't understand the value of the blessing. And you're saying to the world that something would have been more important. Everybody knows I left your church because my family is more important to me than the role of youth pastor. I even prayed about that. And my family is more important to me than the role of youth pastor. My family is more important to me than being a knight. My family is more important to me than anything that you gave me, okay? Or anything that you teased me with, okay? And so that's because True Father said that the blessed family is the most valuable thing that God, Jesus, and true parents ever get to behold, past, present, or future. And I've been taking that seriously ever since 1999. I had a position in the Pure Love Alliance. I was the teacher trainer. I left immediately as soon as I read that because I felt like I wasn't living like my family was the most valuable thing. And I've been living that way ever since. So for you to think that I would flippantly offer my wife, no, I don't even believe that you think that. I don't know why you would even think that telling people who know me would go for that. That's why I'm getting calls. See, like, you're screwing up. You're screwing up because people can tell authentic, okay? And, you know, that serious face that you put on, like all these other faces that you put on, you copied off of Joel Osteen for a little while. You copied off of Jesse Edwards for a little while. You copy people for a little while. Everybody behind your back is talking about how you copying off of this black minister that you schmoozing with. Okay, okay. You know what it looks like to watch a true child copy somebody else, as if that person has something more valuable than that true child has, just by the virtue of his own birth. Do you know how silly that is? Yet, why? How come you never get called on it? You never get called on it because people don't want to, rock your boat and ruffle your feathers. Okay, I was very slow to even talk about these things. I never talked about these things to you. But if you're going to jump in my behind, if you're going to accuse me of offering my wife when I was in a state of not answering the question that you asked, I got to wonder, wow, you sweating me that hard, bro? You sweating me that hard? I haven't been in your church for nearly 2 years. You're still talking about me? What the hell did I do? I asked your wife to tell me what I did to you. Okay? And, that's for another video. And if you look, you know how to pick up the phone. You know how to pick up the phone. Okay? So if you got something that you want to say to me, you could always pick up the phone. All right? So anyway, I'm setting the record straight because my wife deserves better than for people to think that she's married to a man that would have just given her away. Okay? That's stupid. Now, last thing I'm going to say, the wisdom that led into me proclaiming to God that he would never ask that. One, Father said that the God of restoration is not the true God. Okay? The God of restoration, the God that asked people to do all those unnatural things and all those uncomfortable things, is not the true God. It's the God who had to play a legal game in order to bring Satan to surrender. Okay, so you have to do things that Satan couldn't do. Okay, you have to demonstrate that you could do things that Satan couldn't do. So that means that champions had to do things to prove that they were not like Satan, which included Joseph letting his wife go to another man and stuff like that. The God that wanted Joseph to go through that is the God of restoration. And Father said, the God of restoration is not the true God. So I had recalled that in my spirit, that Father had said that. And the other thing that I recall that Father saying your spouse has the value of the cosmos. And the blessed family is the most valuable thing. So when I realized that, Father wouldn't give you the most valuable thing and take it back unless it was restoration. And one of the 5 points in his tour in 2010, when he went around the country with the veterans, the Korean War veterans, right? He said, one of the 5 points that he said that humanity had to be clear about is that restoration is over. Therefore, I said to God, you would never ask me that, okay? And he said, you're right. And that cloud that you and your brother put on me by asking, just musing, I understand you're musing, and I understand that there's a lot you don't study about the principle. I understand that. So, but we tolerate that. Well, some people don't actually study the principle, okay? But others, we humor it. We humor it. So anyway, you got me good. You got me good. You actually made me think for like 2 weeks on whether or not I had the guts, the nerve, or whatever it took to make such an offering. And in the end, I realized because of Father's words that God is not asking such a thing right now. Now, I'm sorry, I got one more story to tell. So when I realized this, about a week after I realized it, I was at the potluck conversation again, and I told everybody at the table how the whole problem resolved. And I said what I said to God. I said, God, you would never do that. And God said, you're right, right? Cook Janim speaks up, and he says, yes, he would. So I don't know what to tell you. I'm not going to sit there under those circumstances and argue with Cook Janim, especially when I had relatively just met the guy, okay? I could certainly argue with him now after, my investigation is concluded, right? But I wasn't going to argue then. He always says stuff like that. Okay, so here God saying one thing, and this guy, without, where does this confidence come from? I don't know. I'm not offended by confidence, but it's got to come from somewhere because he said something 180 degrees opposite of what God told me to liberate me from that question. Okay? I wasn't born in the Restoration Age, so I didn't actually have to face that question. The only reason I even faced that question, would you send your wife to Father's room, is out of respect for 2 guys who, from what I see, still haven't figured out what it means to be born from true father and true mother. Because, come to think about it, you were actually physically born from Hak Jahan. And that woman actually succeeded. And when I tried to hold out some respect for that fact, and the fact that she united with Father so that Father could proclaim certain victories, you guys had such disdain that you would cut off from these facts that are now immutable. What's bound on earth is now bound eternally. You cannot take that away. Even if she erred in the latter part of her life, you can't take that away from Hak Jahan. It's written in the stars, especially after Father proclaimed that those providences were concluded. Now, she may not be the ideal object partner who, does what her subject partner wishes in an unfailing way, okay, even after his death. But really, do you really think that Yunanim is? I mean, I could go on about that. So do me a favor. Unless you really want, me to come on. You don't really want to go there. You're going to wind up looking like the bad guy anyway, okay? Because the more I talk about the blessing, the more it's going to look like this is not the guy that Hyungjin's talking about, okay? Because I know what the blessing is, okay? And, for me to say that, if you think that I'm saying you don't know what the blessing is, I didn't say you didn't know what the blessing is. I said I know what the blessing is. And I know that when I speak about the blessing, it's not 9 times out of 10 that people confirm that sounds right. It's 10 times out of 10. And you'll never take away from me the fact that Father looked at me and said, you understand very well. Okay? He told me that, eyeball to eyeball, so that when people start playing games with me, all I have to do is dust it off, and keep it moving. Okay? So, the blessing is an inoculation from fallen nature. That's the other thing. I don't have to act like a greedy archangel who want to, make you happy just because they already feel like they're starting from a position of need. I was never in a position of need. Not from day one in your presence. You know why? Because I'm filled with the gift that your Father gave me. Filled with it. Okay? So you're having a problem understanding something. Okay? You don't need to talk about me. I value the blessing to the utmost degree. The blessing is the instrument of my salvation. The blessing is the instrument of original love. So, at least if you're going to say that I had considered offering my wife, why don't you tell the world that it's because you asked me the question? And why don't you refresh everybody's memory that you were the one telling everybody to play the role of the best man? Now do me a favor. Go and make up some, twisted recollection of what you were sermonizing about so that you don't even have to think in your mind, I owe this guy an apology. Go ahead and make a justification, because I really do think you will. That's the Hyung Jin who reached right. I mean, when you told me that you begged me to come to your dojo, I mean, I'm sitting there, because this is father son, I didn't call you out, but you never begged me. I'm like, who are you lying to? To my face? You're telling me to my face that you begged me to come to your dojo. Like, seriously? Like, that's a story that you need to tell yourself in your head so that you can commence to whatever form of abuse or neglect or reject or dismissiveness that you want to exercise against me. Okay? So don't worry. I'm still very loved by True Father. I still have the gift that True Father gave me. Okay? And I'm still ready to testify about it. Okay? So, and I'm very fair. All those unfair things that your favorite lieutenants did to me, okay, the problem with that is not my testimony of what they did. The problem is that they did it and you didn't know what to do about it. Or would you like me to think that they did it because you told them to? Well, at least I have enough respect for you that I don't think they did that because you told them to. I think that they did those things because Cookchinam told them to. I think that they did those things because you and Cookchinam are unseasoned spiritual leaders. Like, you don't know that people have false sickness. You don't know that people lust after power, position, and praise because they inherited those values from the archangel, which is a hierarchical entity's emotional diet. You don't know that you're surrounded by people who want to become somebody because they feel like they haven't become enough yet. You don't know that? Maybe you don't know that because being raised by them means you're infected by it. You can't distinguish it. Okay? I tried to get the archangel to apologize in the microcosm of the public official versus the patron or the church supporter, right? So they made a mockery of that entire process until basically I would have had to strip myself of my own rights in order to commence with court. Okay? But you didn't want to hear that that's the way it ended. Okay? You didn't want me to tell you the games that they played. Now, you get to say that you naively believe in them and you just naively trusted them. But we all know that you know everything about plausible deniability because you sermonized about that in the first 4 after breaking the silence. You sermonized very clearly about the art of plausible deniability. Okay? Because the worst thing that we could think is that you're completely two-faced and that you actually had those lieutenants irritate my efforts to bring the archangel, which is the church official, to the point where they could say sorry, okay, to the person representing the citizen, okay? So that never happened. That is a nasty stain on our recent history. I don't think it undoes Father's victory. But I do think that it is the microcosm driving, the deep state to continue obfuscating the investigation into Ukraine and this kind of thing. So, I mean, you got to ask yourself, why did you have that much trust that you let these guys play that many games? Unfounded gag order, Tim Elder saying the Chunoguk does not exist. Your brother in his deposition can't even admit that he probably wrote the most of the Chunoguk Constitution. He was asked 3 or 4 times. He was really trapped. He was really trapped. So you guys are, well, dishonest about the origin of the Constitution. Okay, so listen, this is me going light, man. Okay, look. You struck at, look, I know you're Asian, so you're never gonna say sorry. You shouldn't have talked about my wife like that. Okay, you shouldn't have talked about my wife like that, and you shouldn't tell people who look at me as one of the people who can actually take a stand for the blessing, right? Like go out, run out, and champion the deep purposes of the blessing through Reverend Moon, right? Why would you want to trivialize that guy? Okay, because you don't like me personally. I mean, even if I don't like you personally, okay, And after you say stuff like that, look, look, I don't even like you because you're true father son now. Because all you kids that make these grave errors in front of all mankind are examples of how you still need to grow and how you still need to come to understand the way that history sees you. Okay? The way that the original mind that created the universe actually sees the children of Adam. You're majestic, and there ain't nothing you could do about it, and you don't have to do anything in order to be beloved. Okay? Because you were born properly. Everything that you do is just a sincere effort to give back. Okay? So when you make a sincere effort and your life doesn't depend on it, okay, or your sense of identity doesn't depend on it, you say sorry when you make mistakes. Or you say, oh yeah, I made that mistake. Because you know it doesn't undo your identity. So I cling to the blessing because it gives me that kind of strength. Why the heck would I just flippantly put a scar on my blessing by offering my wife? So, look, you're Asian, so I don't expect an apology. You're a true child. Look at all the behavior of your siblings. You know I don't expect you to become square and square up with me, okay? But I'm doing this video because you shouldn't have said that about me and my wife.